Welcome to Get Rich Without Being a Bitch. This is the place to hear real and raw conversations about what it takes for female entrepreneurs to achieve financial success and live a rich life. I'm Vanessa Shaw, author of The $1 Million Question, and your hostess for this podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of Get Rich Without Being a Bitch. Very excited and frankly curious about my guest today. We have with us Dana Pharant, who runs her own business, empowering other women about really being in the driver's seat of their business and owning their power, which of course totally speaks to the heart of the work that we are doing with women as well. And I'm very excited to dive into this conversation because Dana has a really interesting backstory. And I just know a couple of the highlights of her backstory. I actually don't know the details, but the minute I heard the highlights, I was like, okay, we just need to get you on the podcast. So I'm going to be learning about this at the same time as you are when you're listening. And let me just give you a little kind of sneak peek as to what happened when we were booking Dana as well onto my calendar to do the recording. One of my team members reached out to me and was like, Vanessa, there's something up. I mean, is this normal? Have you been hacked? Something's odd. And I was like, what's going on? And they went, well, there's a dominatrix that is booked on your calendar. And I was like, yes, because Dana Pharant is my next podcast guest. She grew up in a cult. She left that cult at 18. In her 30s, she became a dominatrix. And we are going to be diving into all of this juiciness today. Dana, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Vanessa. I am so looking forward to having a fabulous conversation with you.
So, there's so many places where, again, I'm curious. I just want to kind of let my curiosity lead this. Growing up in a cult, I just have no idea or perspective of what that was even like. So can you kind of give us the cliff notes of like, what does that mean? What does it look like? What was the experience of that?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I grew up Jehovah's Witness and my parents were extremists with it. So it was very controlling. And in that organization, basically, I wasn't allowed to associate with anybody outside of that organization. And we had things that we had to do. Of course, people are familiar with the door-to-door knocking that used to happen regularly. And then in school, there was a lot of segregation that happened. So we weren't allowed to participate in any kind of religious and or holiday things. So you imagine art class. Do you know how many, holidays there are? Every art class, like the week leading up to Christmas is all Santas and things. And I can't participate in any of that. I'm always doing something different. The Lord's Prayer and the national anthem, of course, I grew up at a time that was played. I always had to stand out in the hall for that to say that I was not participating, right? The visual. So every turn I am segregated from the normal population in school and always feeling different. And then the confines and the constructs within the religion is such that you are constantly shown that as a female, you have no value. You're there to get married, have children. That is your purpose. Don't worry about getting an education. Don't worry your pretty little head about that. It is really just imprinted over and over again that you have no value, that you're just, it's just there. And so that's what I grew up with. That's the imprinting that happened. And then, also layered on that, I had a stepmother who felt very jealous of me. I didn't realize it at the time, but when I left at 18, I truly believed that I was two things, that I was stupid and that I was fat. And I was neither of those things. I'm actually in the top 3 percentile of intelligence. And when I look back at pictures of myself then, it's like, ooh, I was skinnier then. I don't think I'm fat now. So, there's a lot of mental manipulation that happens in cults, lots of brainwashing, we call it. And those are the hard pieces to untangle because they happen at such a formative time in your life. So that's kind of where I came from and what I was moving out of.
Gosh, as I say, so as you say, and to be, like completely immersed in that, right? And as you say, then the segregation. So What was it like as well growing up? I mean, to have that level of segregation, I imagine that led to a lot of discrimination as well from other kids, because kids, let's face
Yeah,
it, they can be
kids
pretty
are
brutal
cruel.
and pretty unkind.
Yeah, I was quite fortunate. There were some other kids that had it a lot worse than me. Because I have such a high emotional intelligence, I think I was able to kind of make friends with everybody. I definitely got picked on. I got teased. I didn't get bullied, thankfully. Um, but mostly there was just, it's just this underlying like, oh, we're having a part. Oh, you can't come, like
Mm,
those kinds of things. So there was always on the outside. And my way of coping with it was to become friends with everybody, and then make my main group of people, especially in high school, I made my main group all the people who were like the nerdy people, right? The
mm.
ones who weren't likely to have parties that I was going to have to say no to. So those were my ways around it. But definitely, I always felt like an outcast. I always felt like I couldn't because I couldn't participate. I
Yeah,
couldn't do the things that other
yeah.
kids were doing.
Absolutely, and so tough. And then let's face it, growing up as a kid, that we've got enough insecurities anyway, right?
Right?
Because we're finding our own way in the world. Like,
Yes.
look at myself here on screen. I was the ginger-haired, freckled kid that was often picked last for teams and things. And not overly athletic either, right? But again, that's like,
Right.
hey, that's still fairly small compared to what other people have gone through, and certainly yourself. Tell me about the lead up, though, to being 18 and leaving a cult, because from the outside, I imagine that this is not something easy. And where did that thought process, oftentimes, because I think about some of the clients we work with, and of course that you will have worked with as well, just leaving your own hometown and the place that you've grown up in can be really difficult to break away, right? Because other people feel threatened by that level of change. They can feel a level of betrayal. And I've lived on different continents now, and several different countries. But leaving a cult is got to have a whole other set of kind of rules, and expectations around it. So I'm curious about kind of your mindset, even leading up to that. What got you in the thought process?
Yeah. It's interesting because when I look back now, I'm like, oh my goodness, I did that. Because there is that, like, wow. In order to leave the cult, like I had to leave everyone and everything that I've known because everything revolves around the organization. Everything revolves around those people. Those are all your friends, those are your family. For me, they were like my surrogate families. Um, and I think the biggest motivation for me in the mindset was that I had such a strong disconnect and a repulsion for what they were preaching, what they were spewing out from the center, that it just was not resonating, and I kept balking it inside. And I tried going the other way. I tried going all in. At 16, I got baptized and I was like, all right, I'm like gonna get in. I'm gonna like make this work, right? I want to fit in somewhere. And I tried that, and after about 2 months, I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm all out." So,
Mm,
that's kind of a theme for me. I noticed that when I try everything, when I've like, "Okay, I've been all in, and yeah, now I can safely say I need to be all out." And, I was very fortunate that I actually had, a few family members that had already left. So my mother had already left and my sister had already left. So I had a somewhat of a support outside, but knowing for me that if I stayed, the path that I could see for myself was me killing myself, and that
mm,
it was like, I want to have me, I wanna do what works for me, no matter what the cost, and that's what I got to, and I had to leave.
mm. It's interesting when even there's a part of that that really resonates with my own story of wanting to leave Switzerland. Now, mine wasn't around, actually killing myself and ending my life. However, there most definitely was a part where there was a part of me that was dying inside.
Mm,
And I just knew, again, it's like, no, if I'm on this path, the path that I'm on now, I'm going to become a smaller and smaller version of myself. And that became the thing that was painful enough to propel me to want to make a really big move. Because, again,
yeah.
moving from Europe, closing down everything, getting kids out of school, and coming to the States is, it's a fairly big deal. Like everything doesn't seem like it now, right? But again, many people
Yeah.
don't do those things. So totally get that. And then, so okay, so you leave, but then what? It's like, where do you go? I mean, how do you, at 18 as well? I mean, again, it's a very tender time in somebody's life.
Yeah.
Adulthood, we're trying to work, figure things out, wonder what our journey is, not what the path is that we're going to take. And I'm guessing that you had very few, you had nobody to
Yeah.
guide you except for yourself at that point.
Yeah, it was a lot of trial and error, and I would say way more error than success. I quite honestly, I just went down the path of, sex and drugs and alcohol and, trying to numb out, and in looking back, I can see that what a lot of what I was doing was experiencing extremes. So I would go and, be right into the drugs and the alcohol. And then I would spend a time, I went to AA and I sobered up and I was like, okay, I need to be sober. And I didn't touch anything. And in experiencing those two extremes, that's just one example, but in experiencing the two ends of the spectrum, I started to figure out, okay, who am I? Because here's the interesting thing with leaving a cult is that, if you've gotten in, say you got into a cult at 18 and then you leave, you eventually untangle the brainwashing and you go back to who you were before you joined. But who I was before I joined was not born. So I
Mm.
had to spend a lot of time discovering who am I? What works for me? And again, hindsight, like I'm 50 now, so I can look back and I can say, "Oh, now I see what was going on with the journey is that all the way through it, everything that I've done is experience both ends of a spectrum and then figure out where is that happy medium for me." And it's a long process. I did a lot of therapy. I experienced a lot of different modalities and healings, and then some of the most profound healing actually was in the dungeon. So when I got involved with the BDSM world, that was where I really started to be able to untangle the abuse that had happened and untangle some of the programming and really start to step into my power, which was the piece that I felt like I never had growing up. I didn't feel like I had a voice. I didn't feel like I had the right to ask for what I wanted. And so that space of getting into that world was so vital for me. It was so healing.
Mm. Gosh, I think again, even when you say the dungeon, and I'm like, okay, like, let's go there, right? Um, yeah, again, not the obvious path of healing, right? Or again,
Right?
perhaps not. I mean, and who knows, right? And let's say it's not where my head naturally goes to. Let me
Right.
correct that. Not where my head naturally goes to.
Yeah.
And as I say, yet so much curiosity around that. So, being a dominatrix, I mean, what does that, what did it do for you? I mean, kind of why that new path of healing, and what was important, and what was some of those key pieces of learning there?
Okay. So let me back up and make some links. So at 21 I started my own business in massage therapy. And along the path I had, branched out. I had massage therapy clinics and I had started a massage supply outlet. So that is all going on in my professional life. And I ventured into the BDSM world for my personal exploration. I was interested personally. And I started out on the submissive side, and that provided such a deep healing, especially for some of the sexual trauma that I'd went through. And I know it sounds crazy. It's like, okay, so I have this trauma, so I'm going to let somebody beat me in order to heal the trauma. It sounds absolutely wacky.
I know it does.
But
I'm like, okay, help me
what?
understand.
What? Absolutely. So bear with me. So here's the setup is that because everything is negotiated, everything is talked about all the way through it, the submissive actually has all of the power. they're the ones that are saying ultimately what is okay and what is not okay. And so that process allows you to start taking back your power. And then within the scene, you surrender to the other person, and because you've already, scripted out loosely what you want to do with the scene. And what I did is I had some people who were very talented with energy work and the BDSM. And so we reenacted the abuse. But the key is that we were able to provide a different outcome in which I was able to reclaim my power in such a profound kinesthetic way that started to really change everything. It changed my whole physiology. It changed my brain chemistry. For the first time, I let go of the depression, which I didn't even realize I had until I let go of it. Um, and that experience, so having such a dramatic shift in just 2 sessions was a pull for me. So my background as a healer led to the fact that I wanted to flip to the other side. I wanted to pick up the whips. I wanted to take people on this other healing journey because it was so profound and so quick. I mean, I had done 20 years of one, close to 20 years of therapy up to that
Mm.
point, and it had never even come close to touching the transformation that I had in that moment. And since then, I've gone on, I've done a lot of other things that have been quite profound as well. But that switch, seeing the transformation that's possible was really what called to me.
And again, thank you for just explaining that so beautifully, because I mean, I'm learning a lot through this, and I really hope our listeners are as well, because it's so easy. Let's face it, as human beings, we judge, right? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
and we always judge when we don't understand.
Hmm.
And if only we could have deeper conversations and ask better questions and remain
Yes.
in curiosity, we can learn so much. My background would have certainly, growing up in very kind of middle class, prim and proper England, would have certainly been, that's just weird, they're weird, like, that's not for us, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But frankly, that would also mean closing the door on it, right? And never being curious about it.
Hmm.
And I love what you said around, the deep healing. I've also, I've actually been a somatically trained coach myself. I
Right.
truly believe in healing through the body. We can't just heal. We can't heal. We can make sense of things at a cognitive level, but when there's just been not even necessarily trauma, right? I mean, we're talking in your case, like deep trauma, but for
Hmm.
some of us, we just need to heal like stories that we've taken on,
Yeah.
yet they get embodied, right? Embodied inside of us. And as I
Hmm.
say, cognitively, we can try and make sense, but yet we can often find that we're still being ruled and governed by those deeper stories.
Yeah.
And it's that body work, as you say, and the experience of something that can create such profound shifts. So really thank you for explaining that, because this is really making sense for me now. And so for you, as you say, going to the other side like wasn't about, oh, now I've kind of discovered I've got this kinky side, right, which is kind of like what on the outside it could look like,
Yes.
right? It was, oh, I've experienced that because I've been in the hands of very gifted healers. And now I want that to be a part of my journey so that I can help other people.
Yeah. And I have a kinky side. So,
Anyway.
it's both. There's
Okay.
always a yes and.
There's a yes, and I was going to say, and like, do we have whole outfits that are cool around this? I mean, we can
Oh,
go
yeah.
off into, right? Exactly. There's always going to be another side, a bit like me with tennis, right? It's like we do these things for, the outfits and everything and the other persona that we can get into. So, okay, so let's bridge this into, what has being a dominatrix? Because we were looking at, okay, that was on the submissive side, on the healing side. So
Mhm.
then what was being a dominatrix? What did that teach you? What
Oh
did
my
you learn,
goodness.
some of those lessons from there?
So much, so much. And, quick little plug for my book. So I have a book called Become a Badass in Business. It's all about linking these lessons from the dungeon to the business world. But just to kind of give you the highlight reels, basically for me, um, The main thing is that walking into that room, so you've already had your discussion, you've negotiated with the client what's okay, what's not okay, and in that moment when you walk in, you need to embody this presence and this power of, I'm in charge, I say what goes, and I have this. And to me, that is such a huge component for business owners, is that most business owners wimp out and then they get walked on by their clients, they get walked on in negotiations, and they give it all away and they don't have profits. And so to me, it's learning to really embody that presence. And it's not a mean kind of presence. It's because I'm always thinking, okay, I have to remember, what are their triggers? What's okay, what's not okay? Like, this has all been negotiated. And I have to keep that in mind. So and I have to make sure that they're safe, right? There are some physical issues here.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
could kill them, right? There are physical issues. So it's kind of a high level service position in that I'm making sure that they're getting what they need so that they can transform and get the outcome that they want. But in that moment, when they surrender their power, I'm the one that's in charge. And I have to be willing to hold that, because if I don't hold it, here's the great thing: submissives will not surrender if you're faking it. There is no faking it in the dungeon. You got to be it or don't be it. Like, there's no in between.
Mm.
And that's the beauty. Is like, for me, it's that embodiment, learning to actually like be in it, not just wear a costume.
Yeah, be in it. Again, it's back to that, I fake it till you make it is something I'm really against
Oh,
precisely for those reasons, right?
exactly.
It's just so, so cliche, so overdone. And yet, as you say, there's, we can never out kind of pace or outsmart our own identity, like that beingness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know one of the things as well that you've said, and again from those lessons is, if we start to now bridge this into money, right? Because there's a whole load of bridges here. For one of the things I see, I know that you see it as well, is, we get in our own way as women business owners. We
Mm.
don't own our value. That's one of the places I go to. It's like we don't own our value.
Yep.
And that means that we're not fully in our power, right?
Yep.
And then that's going to translate into, in my world, as you say, we'll see that we won't sign up the right clients. We'll second guess ourselves. We undercharge. As you say, we're not paying ourselves. I mean, a whole load of kind of money, problems
Yeah.
start to show up. But can you share a little bit more about your perspective, on that link with, it's not a money problem. It's really that power, that personal power problem.
Yeah. The money to me is like, can be a barometer. So, and to me, I say it's like, it's not just top dollar, because I've worked with several millionaires who are not making profit,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's that combination of making sure that the top dollar's there, but also that you're making profit. And whatever craziness is going on with your world of money, we can always look and root that back to, all right, let's look at where you're not holding your power. Because if you actually stand in your power, in this place of like, I'm allowed to ask for money just because I'm allowed to ask for money, not because I'm worth it or I deserve it, which I hate those terms,
Mm.
but just because like I can, because I'm willing to, then the money problems start to disappear. You start to treat your business in a different way. When you really hold your power and you say, okay, you know what? I'm going to treat this like a business owner, like a real serious business owner. And then they're looking at the bottom line going, hey, things are not working in the bottom line. What's not working? And you're going to address it. But when you're not in your power, you're like, and you're in that panic state. And in the panic state, you can't see it. So to me, all of the things come down to, what's getting in the way of you really feeling like you have it in you to be that powerful business person? And powerful doesn't mean squashing people.
Yeah, it's
I
not power over, right? Which is
no.
a very, very different form of power. This is you being in your power.
Yeah. And I like to describe it as power with. So you have
Mhm.
power with your clients, power with, your coworkers, your colleagues, your joint ventures, all those pieces. But it's not about a power over, because you go far further longer when you collaborate. And at the same time, when that client pushes back and says, I don't think you delivered what you said you were going to deliver, and you can look at it and you say, okay, here's what I promised, here's what I delivered. Um, and if you're not in your power, you'd be like, oh, well, okay, I'll give you an extra hour of my time, or oh, let me give you a partial refund, right? But when you're in your power, you say, here's the things. Where do you feel that it fell short? You could to turn it back to the other person. It's easy to turn it back to the other person because you're not busy making yourself wrong.
Yeah. It's so, again, it is so powerful, right? The word that's sitting in my mind as well, even when you're talking about in the dungeon, and again, being in your power now, for me, this is all about respect. It's self-respect
Mm-hmm.
and respect for others.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so it's that and as you say,
Yeah.
so, it has to start, as you say, with self-respect first. But
Yeah.
again, power over is typically, now we're not respecting other people, right?
Yeah. And I love drawing on the lesson from the dungeon of that. When you hold that energy, when you're standing in that power and you're inflicting, either mental pain or physical pain, you're doing it for their own good.
Mm,
And I think this is a really big lesson in business, is that there's a lot of times when we have to hold our clients accountable, when we have to push back, but it's for their own good. When we've delivered everything that we say that we would deliver and they don't feel happy, then holding them to that space and putting that mirror up and saying, what is missing, makes them look at their own pieces.
yeah, I
And
love that.
that's a gift, right? That's that tough love that makes people grow.
Yeah, and again, it's respectful, it's kind as well, right? It's
Yeah.
that clarity. And I have to say, I have so much respect for people that communicate with me in that way, right? Because again,
Right.
I think it's a gift, right? It doesn't always feel comfortable in the moment, but that's a
No.
place where, right, can be triggering if we've got something to clean up around there, and willing to own that. But again, as you say, it's that holding up the mirror, but particularly when it's done in such a respectful, calm, kind way. It's back to there's no debating this. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you see? I mean, in terms of, I'm curious about your journey. I mean, your own journey, from, again, being in the cult, being a dominatrix, being a business, you've been a business owner for many, many years now. You are clocking up, by my calculation, about 3 decades,
Yes.
right? So again,
Yep.
well seasoned and experienced. What have you seen about your own journey with money and owning your value and then really being in your power? How has that shifted for you over the years?
And that's huge. Like, that's really been such a big motivator for the work that I do now, is seeing that journey. So, another little side story that gets fun for people, but it'll take more time. But basically, the business that I had, the massage supply outlet, I built that up to a 7-figure level. We had 6 staff, and then 2012 things started to kind of come to a head because I was not holding my power, right? Like, on the outside, you can say, oh, well, it's because the staff were screwing up, or, we had clients go bankrupt and not pay us. And, those are the obvious, but
Mm,
really, I wasn't holding my power. And when I really got honest with myself about the fact that I hired people who needed jobs instead of hiring the best people, I gave in, I made friends with them, which I don't regret, but I made friends with them and then stopped holding them accountable.
yes.
And those are the pieces, right? Those are the pieces that caused my business to really to go almost under. I did turn it around and then eventually sell it. But recognizing that, as I was turning it around, when I really brought in this dominatrix energy, I saw sales go up. And then, being human, there are times where it was like, oh, I would like fall back into the thing and sales would drop off. And I watched this pattern a few times and went, oh my goodness, this is it. This is
Mm.
a huge component of the piece. And it is not about clearing your money blocks. It is about figuring out what is in the way of you holding your power, whether that's trauma that's unresolved or just that you haven't ever experienced it. You don't know what it feels like and you don't know how to do it. Do you need the language? Like, what are the things? But figuring that out and changing it.
Yeah. And as you said, there's some things as well, Dana, you've said today, I mean, some real truth bombs here. And I kind of want to go back over them. And, you said as well, like the whole going down that deserving and worthy path, right? And you see my eye roll as well. I feel like, again, it's a massive trap.
It is.
It's a real trap. And I feel like it's a trap as well that's kept in place by some people that, really, again, in a manipulative way.
Yes.
Because let's face it, we're never going to win that battle. I mean, if we start going down the, am I worthy? Am I deserving? All of these things, it's like, why are you not really and truly? And then we get into stories and this happened. Now I've got to heal this. And it's like, how far down do we have to keep going? Right.
Mm-hmm.
I've known people that have been on those journeys for 3 decades.
Right.
And they still aren't getting ahead in business.
Yep.
Right. And they still haven't, they haven't cracked even the 6-figure code. And it's like, good Lord, because you've put all of this energy, frankly, in the wrong place, because it's just it's a losing game.
It is.
And I always come back to, like, could we just accept the fact that we're a miracle? However we got here, we're all an absolute miracle, irrespective of backstories, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And like, when you are adding value to the world through your business, it is just right and normal that value comes back to you.
Yeah. Right? And I always like to invite people. It's like, you know what? Just ditch the whole idea of deserve or worthy. You are neither. You will not be either. Who cares? Make money because you decide to make money. There is a lot of people in the world we can point to. I won't name names, but there's a lot of people we can point to who make money, a lot of money that I would say don't deserve it.
Yeah.
What? So deserving has
nothing to do with anything.
Zippo to do with making money, and being worthy has nothing to do with making money. Is a choice that you make. That's it. Money is a choice that you make. Feeling deserving, feeling worthy is also a choice that you make, but it is not something that you need to clear in my experience.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And as you say, we know there's plenty of people in the world that are rolling in it.
Mm-hmm.
And, as you say, have done it by, absolutely unethical means. And say, like, why do we think that they're more deserving than you are?
They're not.
So I love that, to say, like, let's just cut that, not go there. And as you say, it's a choice.
Yeah.
And I love that you say it like that. It's a choice to be, it's a choice to explore being in your power. It's a choice to be successful in business.
Yes.
It's a choice to want to really dig in and do the work. I think that's the other side of it, right? You've done a lot of work on yourself. I know I have, I'm definitely a personal development junkie, and it's always, we're always peeling back the onion. There's always new layers. But there's also the work around, there's the personal side of it and the leadership side, but there's also the doing the work to learn the skills of being in business, right? That's also, right?
Yeah.
And again, those are all powerful choices that we can make. So somebody that is listening to this though today, and I shared with you, listen, before we started, I was on the tennis court. That's, if anyone's watching this, they've probably seen me change color because I was so red when I started. It's incredibly hot here, and it's just hot and steamy in the desert, which is not how we like it. We like it dry. So I said to you, I wasn't in my power on the tennis court this morning. And I was really aware of that, really aware of it. And of course, I was, what was really grabbing my attention was the steaminess. I was just feeling so hot and uncomfortable and everything. And then, reminding myself that I wasn't in my power and using some of my internal practices, right, to kind of bring myself back in the moment. But what
Yeah.
are some of the things that you recommend? Somebody that's just listening today, that when they notice like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm in a real kind of wimpy place, or I'm making excuses, I'm clearly not in my power. What are some of the things that you recommend?
Okay, so I'm going to diverge from like the standard protocol of what people say. I'm going to
Please
get a
do.
little edgy here.
Yes, go edgy, go
So
edgy.
here's what I want you to do, because you have a primarily female audience. I want you to do some Kegels. Okay, squeeze your perineum muscles. Okay, what happens when you do that is that it provides a little bit of sexual stimulus, but it reminds you of your power, your grounded power. As women, our power source is actually in our root chakra, our genitals.
Mm,
And this is something that a lot of people don't talk about. But of course,
it's
as a
true.
former dominatrix, I'm like willing to go in a lot of places.
Yes.
But that is really powerful ways to actually ground yourself in a way that changes the dynamics, right? Because most people are like, oh, I don't know how to get in my power, I don't know, right? And they're all in their head. When you stop and you take a deep breath and you squeeze your genitals to allow yourself to feel alive, to feel that little bit of juiciness again, then what you do is you pump some of that engine power back up into your body. This is what I say, is that we need our head to logically figure out the strategies, the systems, right? We need our heart to feel the passion and the connectedness of what we want to do and put out in the world. But we need the pussy power to actually drive the engine. And if you're
Mm,
not engaging all three and having them connected, then you're just going to be spinning on, what to do, and that I feel so passionate about what I'm doing, and you generally don't move forward. So to me, that's a really big part of it, is to really start getting connected with your body again. And that's a fast way to do it. There's of course a warning label that goes with that, is that if you haven't dealt with your sexual trauma, and this starts to ignite it, please reach out to get that healed, because
mm.
it is a possibility. But that's just your body's way of saying, hey, we're ready to heal this.
Yes. Yeah. Watch out, girlfriends. By the way, they're going to be listening into this podcast as well. So I said, watch out, girlfriends on the tennis court. Now I have a new tool in the toolkit. Right.
Yeah.
But it's so true, because but again, we often do. We try and access these things through our head. And the head is great for, as you say, strategizing and planning and those smarts. But we've got to tap into deeper places. So good, Dana. Are you ready for my quick 7?
Yes. Bring
Are
it
you in
on.
your power?
I'm in my power.
You're always in your power. Okay, because you haven't prepped these. So
I know. What are you going to ask?
let's go for it. Okay, the quick 7. Fill in the blank. Living richly means
Having loads of choices.
best $100 you've spent recently, and why?
Oh my goodness. Best $100 I spent recently. I bought some Giddy Yo-Yo chocolate. It is like the most to die for orgasmic, pure organic bliss.
There we go. And it costs $100?
Well, I buy it in bulk.
Oh, I was going to say, like, that's really expensive. You're like, where did you have it shipped in personally?
Yeah, it's 2 kilograms of.
My gosh, that really is expensive. A book or podcast that's been highly influential for you, or what? Perhaps it might be just one that you're even listening to right now that's just really.
Oh, okay. I
you.
just finished. Actually, I just put this out into my email list too. Recapture the Rapture. It's Jamie Wheel, and it is looking at redefining how we find meaning in life, and then he explores all the different means that we get to experience peak experience. So a new sense of way of connecting spiritually. So through breath, through music, through sexuality, and of course through psychedelics. So it's very
Okay.
good.
So I like that title. That's one I'm going to download that one as well for myself. You feel you're calling to your next level of leadership and you're scared. What's the next thing you do?
Call my coach.
So many people respond with that one.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't got a coach, you need to get one. Everybody needs a coach. Everyone needs multiple coaches, by the way. It's kind of the best.
And up level. As you outgrow one, get the next level.
Yeah, or make sure that your coach is really, deeply entrenched in their own growth.
Yes.
something you wish you were better at today?
Hmm. The first thing that comes to my mind is singing. I just, for my own sake, I don't necessarily want to torture anyone.
Okay, okay. I love to
Yeah.
sing as well. So,
Oh, cool.
what's on your bucket list that you're really wanting to achieve in the next 3 years? Big dream.
Oh, definitely. What's really been formulating is having week-long retreats where I take people through extreme personal development. So, having all of these different skills that I have, so from the dominatrix, the psychedelic world, the intense radical honesty, and really immersing people into an experience where they can just shift and up level, have some of that peak experience that is so needed in the world today.
Ooh, that sounds really good. And then
Right?
what's something that you're deeply grateful for today?
Mm. I'm gonna pick my cat. So I have two Bengal cats. One has decided to go adventuring for the summer. And then the other one, she came to me and she was this terribly scared little girl. She spent the first 2 weeks hiding under my bed. And after 2 years of like incrementally working with her and so slow, today she's like this so much of a love bug. Today she was just so snuggly and cuddly. I was like, "Aw, she loves me." So,
Oh, furry
yeah,
friends are just the best.
they are.
Dana, this has been really amazing. Thank you. Thank you for being such an amazing guest. We're going to make sure that we get all the ways to connect with you in the show notes. And I want to make sure we get your book in the show notes as well, because I think every woman listening to this show should grab a copy of that book. And they're going
Thank
to learn
you.
an awful lot from those lessons in the dungeon and how that applies to business. So really thank you from my heart to yours. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.